Hello and welcome to Cupcake Addiction's fondant fabric pattern tutorial, where I'm going to be showing you how to achieve this really cool and really versatile kind of a fabric-y looking pattern out of your fondant to cover your cupcakes. The things that you'll need for today's tutorial: I've got a little bit of corn flour just in a shaker. I've got some fondant, so I'm going with kind of Valentine's-y colours today. I've got red and I've got white. I've got my cutters, so I'm using a circle cutter. For that, there's no exact size, so you want to take your cupcake and you want to pick one that's about 2 sizes. You can see there the ratio of my cutter to my actual cupcake. So you want one that's about 2 sizes larger than the top rim of your cupcake, and they're going to vary depending on the size of the cupcake that you've baked. I'm using a red velvet cupcake. If you don't have a great recipe, I will link to our red velvet cupcake recipe in the description box below. I've also got some smaller cookie cutters, so I'm using 2 different size love hearts. I've got some plain water, some of our perfectly pipable buttercream frosting, which I will also link to in the description box below, an edible marker, a fondant rolling pin, a knife, and a paintbrush. Let's get into it. All right, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to just give our cupcake a little bit of frosting. So I'm going to do just like a dome or a mound of frosting on top, and you want to give it that really nice sort of a rounded top. I love this style of frosting because it doesn't matter if your cupcakes come out a little bit flat on top or a little bit sunken on top. Build it up with a bit of frosting, stick on some fondant, and it's a perfectly shaped cupcake again. So I'm just scooping on some of that frosting, and try not to get it into the edges of your cupcake liner or your patty pan. And then I'm just going to use my knife just to sort of smooth it around to give it that really nice domed effect. I actually have a whole tutorial on my channel dedicated to achieving the perfect smooth fondant dome. So if you need a little bit more help with getting your cupcakes looking like mine is, check out that tutorial. I'll link to it in the description box below. All right, don't worry if it's not totally perfect, and always take the time to just go around and just neaten up your edges, especially when you're working with a light colored frosting and a dark colored cupcake liner. All right, you want to take your fondant now, and we're just going to roll out our base color. So a little bit of corn flour down, swipe it around, and we're just going to roll this out. You want this rolled out quite thick to begin with because we're going to be rolling it again shortly, so don't go too thin on it. You can see there, mine's still pretty thick. Pop that off to the side, and then you want to roll out some of your red, and you can roll this out quite a bit thinner. All right, now from my red, I just want to pick it up to make sure it's definitely not going to be sticking to the bench, and I'm going to cut just a couple of love hearts out. I'm only doing a small amount of fondant today, but you could certainly do a much larger piece of your white fondant, maybe to do 4 or 5 cupcakes. You do need to work with it quite quickly as it does start to dry out, but you can do a large piece and you can just cut all of your little fabric tops out rather than doing them one by one. Some of my larger hearts and then a couple of my smaller hearts. Beautiful. Now, a little bit of water, and just a little bit. If you put too much water on, it's actually going to come out the backs of your hearts and it's going to cause the discoloration on your white fondant. So just a little bit just to stick it down, but you'll see I haven't come all the way out to the edges. And you just want to sort of position them haphazardly on your piece of white fondant. Beautiful. Now, they're all sticking up and we want them to look really, really flush, like a nice piece of fabric. I'm going to put a little tiny bit more corn flour down just to make sure that my white's not going to stick. And then I'm going to really lightly and gently with my fondant rolling pin, just roll over a couple of times in this direction and then a couple of times in this direction. Now, the reason that I'm rolling in the 2 different directions is to try to retain as much of that authenticity in the shape from our initial shape. So if you roll too much all in the one direction, you start to stretch them out. So you can see there by doing that, now those love hearts are becoming one with that white fondant. All right, now taking your circle cutter, you want to find the best part. So I've got a little bit of red here. I'm not 100% happy with that. I'm just going to go and find the best part that's going to give me 2 full love hearts and a couple of little bits of some of the other love hearts, and cut out that nice circle. Don't throw this away because you can always wrap that back up and you can use it to now colour red or orange or another colour with sort of a red base in it, a bit of a pink, but it's definitely not wasted. Now, taking your little fondant disc, we're going to pop that on top of the cupcake, and I'm just smoothing down around the outside, pushing that fondant disc down, trying not to let that buttercream frosting escape out the edges too much. And once you're happy that it's on, tuck it around all of the sides to give it a really nice, neat fit. Beautiful. Now, it's still not looking fabricy, and this is where our edible marker comes in. So you can also use a little bit of food colouring and a very, very fine paintbrush, but I love these edible markers. So if you can get your hands on one, I'd highly recommend it. I'm going to come just inside those little patterns, and I'm just going to do a series of little tiny lines, kind of like stitching. In my opinion, this is where the magic happens. This is where it really starts to come to life. Beautiful. Now you can leave that as is. It's beautiful just as it is. You can add in more detail. I'm actually going to give just a couple of little tails in here to this main love heart to make it look a little bit like a love heart balloon, and just to fill in this little gap of white that we've got happening here. And I'll do the same with this love heart here. So you can see there how versatile this technique is. The possibilities are truly endless. We've got some over here with some little ducks, we've got some little flowers, we've got little stars. I hope you guys have loved this tutorial. I hope you enjoy using it for all kinds of different occasions. As always, thanks very much for watching My Cupcake Addiction.